Kenny, as we take a look at Kyle Larson speaking to Kevin Harvick yesterday at Media Day for the postseason known as the Chase for the Sprint Cup, Kevin Harvick won the very first 2 Sprint Cup Series races here, 2001 and 2002. He said that this track has changed dramatically since 2001.
Right. You know, this track has not been repaved since prior to the first race here in 2001. Now, as we watch Kyle Larson and Jeff Hammond, you brought this up. Look at this track is what we call lane racing. In the garage area, we have, you know, the word called lane racing. It's because since it hasn't been repaved, check all those tar strips out.
So the seams where they actually, when they paved the track originally, have had to be basically filled in with some with tar.
Yeah. So right now it's 53 degrees, 54 degrees here. Tomorrow the sun comes out, and if it starts getting a little hot, you do not want to put your right rear in the black tar. You don't want to put your right front in the black tar. Now, James Busher, as we see here in the 60, he's second right now. Chris Busher. Now, it's easy to get them both.
They're all in the same family.
You know, it's funny. I talked to Chris at Dover. Me and you did, and he was upset because he says a lot of people don't know that Chris driving this 60 and his relative are relatives.
Yeah. And he's been having a pretty strong, you know, second half of the year after coming off that big win at Mid-Ohio. Chris Busher's really starting to get his act together. You talk about a guy that's been fast all year long. Is this Brian Scott?
He's done everything but win.
Everything but win, and we keep saying it, Chris. I mean, about Steve, about Brian Scott right now. I'm sorry. But Brian, every weekend we say it's his time. Hey, he's getting ready to break out. I think we shouldn't say anything at all. Just say, hey, he's in P1, good luck. Because it just hadn't been happening. He needs something to break that ice because he's got a fast race car. Every week he's got a fast race car.
Brian Scott, the pole sitter here back in July. Let's go back to Matt Yoakum.
Really a combo platter of lessons for Kyle Larson. Remember back in July, he finished third here in the 42 machine. Now the game plan for this session, he made one run, 14th fastest on the board. They are concerned like everyone else about weather, so they're going to make some small, quick changes on the car right now and then send him back out so he can just settle in and get a long run to get a good feel for the race car. But it's a little bit tight on entry and across the center, so they're going to try to work on the entry and the center for the next run.
All right, thanks very much, Matt. Brian Scott, the quickest, followed by Chris Busher, Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott, and Brendan Gaughan. Illinois, the Chicagoland Speedway, the NASCAR Nationwide Series practice teams, 15 minutes into this 1-hour practice, basically 50 minutes of track time. We go back. Well, first, let's talk about Kevin Harvick.
Well, first thing I noticed is what we were talking about earlier, lane racing, where, you know, he entered high, he stayed high, and he knows what he's doing at this racetrack. You know, he won the first 2 races here, and look here, check his groove out. He's already up there, he's straddling the tar marks, not putting his right front or right rear right in the black tar marks. It's simple. There are racetracks that drivers, they get it right away, and he got it right away when he first come in here. He's still digging.
He really likes this racetrack, and the thing is, he's not by himself. He's one of the guys that's involved in the race for the Sprint Cup Championship here. He's getting a little extra seat time here, but he's not by himself, guys. You start looking around, you got guys like Kyle Larson and along with Denny Hamlin, they're all getting some extra seat time.
Let's go back to Wendy in the garage. She's with Brendan Gaughan.
Brendan Gaughan is currently 5th on the practice chart here in the Nationwide Series. Brendan, in your 5 laps, what have you learned about your race car and the different lanes that we're talking about right now in our practice session?
No, watching Kevin Harvick, that's what I love about Chicago. This place is 3-4 lanes wide already. Trucks put some Goodyear rubber down yesterday, so that helped us. Our South Point Chevy's good. We were a little too snug, so Shane has something he's been wanting to try, and since we unloaded so good, we're going to try what he's been wanting, and we'll go back out there and see if I can't run multiple lanes.
You were telling me how much the track has or has not changed since you guys have visited.
No, the only thing, I mean, you can see the difference right now is it's, you know, nice and cool right now. For everybody complaining about the cold, I don't care about you. It's nice and cool. So lots of grip, lots of horsepower for the ECR engine, and it means speeds are fast.
All right, it's definitely some fall temperatures. Steve Burns, Brendan Gaughan finished 11th here in July.
Wendy, he comes in here 8th in points. Got a win on the road course earlier this year, and that coming at Road America.
He did it the hard way. He actually did it in the rain, just about a wet racetrack. Had to hold off some hard charging Alex Tagliani and everything like that. I mean, off course early in the race. I mean, he really had to battle that day to get that win.
You know, I was down in the Nationwide garage area earlier today, as we always are, doing our homework, and I asked somebody, I said, who's the funnest driver? Who makes you happy? And they said, Brendan Gaughan.
Oh, he's a great personality.
Everybody likes Brendan. The 99, James Busher. What I like about him in this practice session is he started out following Kevin Harvick, and he was smart. He said Harvick is good here, he wins a lot. He did a really good job. I'm real happy. Even though he's currently 19th, I think the 99 of James Busher's car looks good. Good start to practice.
You know, he's a relative of Chris Busher.
I tell you what,
We're
sometimes.
not good over the bumps.
Listen here.
Our entry.
That was good information. James Busher said, I'm not good over the bumps.
And at the same time, just don't forget, James did win a truck race here in 2012.
Matt Yoakum on Chase Elliott.
And that is one of those here at Chicago. The car was extremely tight. He was struggling on entry to the corner. Greg, I was told him the last time we were here, you were more on the free side. We started you more on the tighter side here. They made some more adjustments, went out on the second run, still tight, but the entry was much better. So they've made some more adjustments on that 9 machine. We'll see if they've made some good headway on trying to work that tightness out.
You know, Matt, you bring up a good point, because as a race car driver, you know, you cannot be so loose that you cannot get going on restarts. And Jeff Hammond, as you know, a lot of these races have been won here lately on restarts. You cannot wait for the car to tighten up nowadays. Nowadays, when they drop the green flag with 10 laps to go at the end of the race, you can't wait for it to tighten up. It cannot be loose. It's got to go. It's got to be balanced. The competition is not giving you any time for your car to be the way you want it to be.
No, you'd like to see it be able to be a transition deal. You know, start out this way, go here, and then finish there. And the days you're saying you've got to go with the drop of the green flag, you really have to get up on the wheel and make it happen. And one thing that I love about what Chase has been able to do this year, I really feel like for the first time in a long time, non-Sprint Cup race car drivers, I'm talking about nationwide regulars, are able to hold their own against, you know, Kyle Busch dominates, yes. But there's been several times when you've watched great head-to-head battles against Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch, and Chase will, you know, be able to win those kind of races. And I think that's, again, what I'm excited about is the ability of he and Ty Dillon to take the measure of the Sprint Cup racers and get the victory lane. So the future of not only Nationwide Series, but the Sprint Cup Series should be solid for years to come.
So, early in this practice, it's still Brian Scott leading the way as we take a look at our leave menu. Sprint Cup practice follows, and then it's NASCAR Live. Qualifying for the Truck Series, final practice for the Nationwide Series. Then this evening, it's the setup with Chris Devoda, and the Camping World Truck Series race follows.
Polaris is making room for 20
practices for the NASCAR Nationwide Series teams here at the blustery Chicagoland Speedway. And to follow up on one of Matt Yoakum's points earlier, there is a threat of rain here later today. Hate to say that, but it is a reality. And with that, we go back to Matt Yoakum.
And back in the garage area, Steve, is the 7 car, Regan Smith. Now, he's chasing his second win of the season, but first here at Chicagoland. And by the way, for some folks, they may not realize Chicagoland is actually in a different time zone, Kenny Wallace. But anyways, Regan Smith said the car's way too harsh over the bumps, and it's just too bouncy. When he hits it wrong, it really sends the car up the racetrack. He's currently 16th on the board, changing some shocks and different items up in the front of the car. Ryan Pemberton just completed a long debrief with Regan in the car. Time zone, Kenny.
Yes,
time zone.
Yeah, what that's about is myself and Larry McReynolds. I said I have to be in the TV booth at 12 o'clock. I was looking at our chart, and that was Eastern time zone.
Eastern.
I would have fainted if you guys were up there. Oh, my God. So let it be a lesson when you're looking at your charts. Make sure it's the time zone you're in.
Hey, I got a question for you. Okay, so for both of you gentlemen,
I know what time zone it is.
So Matt mentions earlier that these teams may not get their mid-afternoon practice because of pending rain.
Right.
So how will that change their agenda here in this practice? And this is a short practice. The second one is much longer. It's an hour and a half, essentially.
But here's what I think the challenge is right now is trying to play the weather deal. Get you a feel, a baseline of where the race car is and how it's working on such a cool racetrack. We've already touched on the fact Brendan Gaughan made it perfectly clear. It was a lot warmer here back in the summer when they were racing. And also, I think he ran that race at night, right? So all these factors, they're going to have to go back and really rely on their engineers and their previous records to get some kind of direction of where they need to be. Steve, I think any of these teams will tell you right now, what you're doing here today is just getting information so you can make a decision to do a final tune on this right here. And here's one of the guys that we don't see a whole lot running in the Nationwide Series, but maybe because he's wanting a little extra seat time at a racetrack that he hasn't raced at this year. You got Denny Hamlin behind the wheel of this number 20.
Denny Hamlin, the 8th driver in that 20 car this year. Well, and I've done the research. No, Kenny Habul, Matt Kenseth, Michael McDowell, Sam Hornish, Daniel Suarez, Eric Jones, and Darrell Bubba Wallace Jr.
Now listen, it is of my opinion that, they have given some of these drivers, a chance. Daniel Suarez,
an opportunity.
Eric Jones, Darrell Wallace Jr. But for the most part, you have a lot of sponsors that come along like Sports Clip and they say, hey, we want to run 10 races. And by the way, we want Denny Hamlin. So, thankful they're able to keep this car going and employ, it probably takes 10 to 15 employees to keep that going. So I have no problem with all those drivers in there because it keeps this car on the racetrack, keeps people working.
Brian Scott still the fastest. He's completed 13 laps, and Chicago native Wendy Venturini is with him.
Well, thank you, Steve Burns. And Brian Scott had the pole here in July, finished 6th on our last race in the Nationwide Series here at Chicagoland. Brian, what have you learned in this practice being fastest on the chart?
I've learned that we got another fast short lot Chevrolet, just like we had here in June. Fighting a little bit some of the same issue that we fought in the race. Just gets too tight as we run in the center of the corner. So we're trying to free it up to make it hold on to the fast speed that it has. But right now, pretty happy with it. I think a little fine tuning, and that's all that we need to do during practice is just fine tune this Chevrolet a little bit.
Describe to the folks at home about the different lanes here at Chicagoland Speedway and what that means for you in the driver's seat.
Chicagoland's really fun racetrack. You can run the bottom, and you typically do for 5 to 10 laps on new tires, and then you can run all the way up to the wall, and you'll see guys kind of move wherever. Different lanes, each handle a little differently, and they can tighten or loosen up your car depending on how you run them. So Ashland suits him, but if you're a driver.
Brian Scott with the best finish of 3rd here twice at Chicagoland. Steve.
All right, thanks very much, Wendy. We talked about Chase Elliott, the points leader. There is your 2nd place driver in points, Regan Smith, 19 points behind. Right now, just 16th fastest. He's working his 10th lap on the racetrack.
And the thing is, guys, this is one of those racetracks right now. You've already brought it up. 8 races to go. It's time to dig in and start turning things around if he wants to wind up winning his championship. If he's got to go up there, he's got to put pressure on his teammate. He's got to figure out how to rattle that rookie, if that's possible, and be able to gain this week. Never finished better than 13th. Some of the fact of this racetrack right there.
Closer look at the battle for the championship. Regan Smith was just 1 win to Chase Elliott's 3.
And I think here's another big factor you got to look at right here as far as that's concerned, is that 300 laps led by this rookie right now, and his teammates led 110.
How about top 5s?
Unreal.
12 has doubled him.
No, that's the reason why he has got what he's got right now, which is a very small lead, but this is where Regan's got to start turning the tide.
Trying to head back out, put some more laps on this racetrack, and we'll step aside.
Tonight,
who's left in this 2014 NASCAR Nationwide Series season. That's hard to believe, but it's true. As we've talked about, Chase Elliott comes in here as the points leader. Trevor Bayne in the 6th car.
There's a lot of moving and shaking going on next year. And as we know, this driver, Trevor Bayne, will move on and be a full-time Sprint Cup driver for this same team, Roush Racing. So I'm sure he's excited. And I like watching the lanes these drivers run. You know, I don't want to wear it out, but it is a good way to learn the grooves, where you want to be. We call this lane racing. Let's watch the 6, Jeff Hammond, as he runs between the black lines. Once again, you don't want to put your right side or your left side tires in the tar that are so.
One thing I didn't notice, the 11 car right there in behind him, Elliott Sadler was gaining ground rapidly on the 6 car of Trevor Bayne. Elliott currently 14th fastest in this practice session. He's run 11 laps to Bayne's 18 laps, so it could be a little bit tired, but he's really reeling him in.
And I must say that sometimes this can be a mind game. So now that was awesome, because Elliott said, okay, I caught him. I know my car's good. I'm going to pull off. Usually you'll try to embarrass that driver in front of you. I've passed you. I've demoralized you. And usually that driver will pull in. But he got right to Trevor, and then he pulled in. So that was some good sportsmanship right there. And believe me, it does happen.
But you're still playing mind games with somebody when you look up and all of a sudden your spotter's saying the 11's gaining on you and he's running the low groove. I noticed all of a sudden the 6 come back down. And Steve, here's another one of those Sprint Cup regulars that you don't normally see here in the Nationwide Series. Eric Almirola in the number 98 car.
And very simple explanation. Why is he running this race? He's getting seat time. He's one of those drivers, 16 drivers in the chase, just getting some extra laps.
And for those at home who don't understand it, we keep talking about the fact Chase Elliott won the summer race here. Sprint Cup guys only see Chicagoland once a year at the start of the chase, and I think they're looking for anything they can get to get a better feel for what this racetrack is going to be like come Sunday.
He's tonight is up drivers. Look away, you see Kevin Harvick, you see Denny Hamlin, Eric Almirola. It goes on, and they are getting that seat time.
Dylan Kwasniewski, also one of the youngsters, 15th overall, working his 20th lap of practice.
He's quite the cool character, isn't he?
He is.
So you go back to the bottom, and middle one in, top, bottom one in. Just work on it.
Okay, so he's somewhat of a rookie, very low on experience. I like what I hear. Go ahead and what we call in the garage area, mop the track up. You could say change lanes, change grooves. Mop the track up means try the bottom, try the middle, try the top. Tell me where your car feels the best. That way, when we start this race, you know some of your go-to grooves. It is, in my opinion, you're going to we'll wear it out up there. Because if everybody runs up there, you start getting more rubber built up there, and the track will slow down. The bottom, on a green-white checker, most likely going to win the race.
So Brian Scott still the fastest. We'll step aside for the moment. We're going to go to a Fox Sports 1 news update and Don Bell.
After testing positive for amphetamines, the ban also includes postseason games. Marlins outfielder Giancarlo Stanton is expected to be released from the hospital today after getting hit in the face by a pitch last night. Regional coverage of either the Braves and Rangers
through this 50-minute NASCAR Nationwide Series practice, the first of 2 here at the Chicagoland Speedway. And, you know, Jeff, we talk a lot about who's the fastest. We've mentioned Brian Scott's at the top of the timing and scoring monitor. However, you want to take a look at who's run the most laps and who's the best over a 10 or 15 lap run.
Yeah, when you talk about that, look at Chase Elliott right there. I mean, he is laying down a lot of laps. There's the guy who won the race early on, followed by the number 90 car.
Martin Roy.
No, Martinois.
Oh, really?
Martinois.
He's French?
Yes, he is. You know?
Very good.
Exactly right. Kevin Harvick, another guy who's very successful here at this racetrack, laying down a lot of laps. You saw Ty Dillon there, a lot of laps. And Steve, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. they're trying to get that information so that if it happens the weather goes bad, they've got enough info to sit down and kind of like figure out a good game plan to come back with to be ready to race on Saturday.
Fun to watch somebody like Martin, how you say it?
Martin.
Wow, very good. Fun to watch him come to a racetrack like this and realize, hey, look, I'm in NASCAR. I'm realizing my dream, and I'm getting laps on the track to learn what I need to do.
And look who's fastest.
Imagine that.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, surprise.
Kenny
You used to say that, don't you, Kenny?
Oh, yeah, Gomer Powell.
There you go.
Kenny said Kyle Busch led a lot of laps last week.
I always leave myself wiggle room in case he didn't lead one lap. You know, in the TV business, sometimes we don't say exactly perfect because somebody will go, he led every lap. I'm like, he led a lot of laps. How's that?
Let's go back to the garage and Wendy.
Chris Buescher is second in this practice session here at Chicagoland Speedway in the he's now third in this practice session, just got bumped by Kyle Busch. In the 6 races on mile-and-a-half tracks, Chris Buescher has 3 of those of top 10s. Now, I spoke to Scott Graves, his crew chief, just now in between these runs. He said he's been tight in the entry of the turn, tighter than any other part of the turn. So they're trying to even out Chris's race car. And obviously, those changes and adjustments have been made. Chris Buescher is headed back out. Matt Yoakum.
Wendy, a tremendous stretch for Ty Dillon in the 3 car. For the last 8 weeks, top 10s in all races except for Mid-Ohio, where he finished 19th. But you include in there that great win at the Brickyard. Now, right now, he's losing the nose on exit, and he just has no stability, period, on exits. They're working more in the back of the race car. He's 13th on the board, and you guys were talking about documenting that this could end up being the only practice for the Nationwide Series. And one area that they worked on the last run, they mentioned to Ty where his pit road entry marks will be, to practice at least once, getting a good gauge of where he needs to use his markers. And back in July, it was a mark on the wall in the middle of 3 and 4.
And I'll say this. I want to give their marketing team at Richard Childress Racing an attaboy. This car comes to a racetrack with so many different sponsors on it. Red Cap. And they're doing a great job. I just think it's incredible that they can run so that you see UNOH on there, Red Cap. We got Bass Pro Shop. Yuling. Good job, RCR.
It's a different business model these days, isn't it?
Well, that's my point. You know, that's my point. You got to work hard to keep that car on the track.
Let's take a look at the 5-lap averages. Kyle Busch, he is the fastest single lap, and he is the fastest over 5 laps.
This is Mark.
Hey, you know what, honey? Let's pack the lawnmower.
Yeah.
Imagine that, honey.
The cooler maybe, but not the lawnmower.
Let's go back to Wendy.
You guys are having way too much fun. I'm with Eric Almirola, one of our chase contenders, of course. Eric, how important was it for you to run the Nationwide Series this weekend at Chicagoland to prepare you for the chase?
I thought it was going to be really important. Really thankful that Smithfield stepped up to pay for me to run some nationwide races here with Biaggi, and they got a really good group of guys here, and they bring really fast race cars to the racetrack when they do race. It's a part-time team, and we're just having fun. Ringo, the crew chief, I worked with him at Junior Motorsports, so he brought me a really good car, and I think it's pretty decent on the average lap trackers, so we're going to wait, and I'm going to go get ready to get my cup car and see what happens in the next practice after all the cup rubber lays down. We'll see how the track changes, but I was really pleased with it right there, so we're not going to change too much and see what happens.
Obviously, Sprint Cup only races here once a year. What are you hoping to learn here in the Nationwide Series that could apply to the cup car?
Well, the biggest thing is on every weekend, the last time I'm on the racetrack is happy hour on a Saturday, and the racetrack changes a lot throughout the Nationwide race, and usually it's a little bit of a guessing game as to what you're going to do with your cup car for changes for the race on Sunday. Well, now I'm going to have first-hand information of what the racetrack does throughout the 200-300 miles of the race Saturday, and I'll be able to talk to Trent Saturday night after the race and talk about the racetrack and talk about our cup car, and I'll basically have more knowledge about what we can expect for the racetrack to do on Sunday.
All right, thanks to Eric Almirola, who has 2 fourth-place finishes here at Chicagoland, but his last nationwide start happened in March of 2013 at Phoenix. Steve?
Thanks very much, Wendy. And as she was speaking, Brendan Gaughan jumped to the top of the timing and scoring monitor. We'll be right back to Chicagoland. Closing moments of this first NASCAR Nationwide Series practice. It's a triple-header weekend here at Chicagoland Speedway. Hopefully the trucks race later this evening. Of course, the chase begins on Sunday.
This is good stuff as we see Chris Buescher running down Ty Dillon. Now is Ty going to try to keep him behind him? These young drivers, they don't like to be shown up. So right away they're going to be racing in practice. And the race is on down the back straightaway.
Again, you're watching two different grooves right there. Ty Dillon kind of went almost through the middle, and Chris went to the low side.
You know, when the tires get older, the high lane is the fastest lane because you don't require much grip, I guess, because you go up there and let the car have its own little groove and comes down the hill a lot quicker.
And you got to understand also, these are kind of like momentum race cars. They don't have the horsepower that the big Sprint Cup cars do. So keeping the car rolling and keeping it, you know, kind of RPM.
Being high race, and that 60 is saying, man, I can't wait to see if I can pass Ty Dillon.
And the one thing I'm noticing right now, red and black is being displayed, so the end of the practice is over with. But it looked to me like maybe they've gotten this 60 car better. Remember, they were talking about he was really tight on entry. It looked like he was gaining ground on the 3 car, at least to enter the corner.
Brendan Gaughan, the fastest in this practice. Are you guys surprised Chase Elliott ran more laps than anybody else?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think that's one thing you got to give a tip of the hat to Greg Ives and Chase, is they don't mind putting laps on the race car to make sure they got enough information to make the right decisions.
Kyle Larson debriefing, and you can bet that his Cup team is listening. The more information you can gather, even though the cars are different on the Cup side, it's all good information.
And a look at the 10 quickest. I want to mention also that you see Kevin Harvick 6th fastest. He was the fastest on a 10-lap average.
By the way, Brendan Gaughan's time right now is already quicker than the July pole because of these cold temperatures. Landon Castle, 24th. He's surprising a lot of people this year, running really good in that 0-1 car.
We had a total of 44 drivers on the racetrack in this practice.
I think they all were anticipating the fact that we may have weather by the time this second practice comes around, so they better get what they can get.
Dylan Kwasniewski debriefing with his team. It's an important time for these drivers and crew chiefs right now.
He needs Great Clips to sponsor him. That's a cool looking haircut. That's innovative.
He did that on purpose, you know.
You know, look at my haircut.
All right, we're going to go to the Charlotte, North Carolina studios and join John Roberts.
Steve, thank you.